There are no accidents. If you're hearing these words, your soul, older than time, deeper than thought, has orchestrated this moment. You've felt it, haven't you? The strange pull towards something unseen, the flicker of recognition in a dream you've never lived, the aching feeling that your life began long before your birth certificate ever existed. That is not coincidence. That is calling. That is the soft whisper of the Akashic Records rising within you. I remember my soul's story if you're ready to embrace this truth. Because what we call the Akashic Records is not a place you visit. It's a vibration you return to. It is the frequency of all that you've ever been, are now, and could become. Etched not in ink or stone, but in the sacred language of energy, memory, and resonance. Some say it's a spiritual database. Others call it the soul's library. But those words are shadows compared to what it truly is, the mirror of divine memory. It is not outside of you. It is the stillness beneath you, the truth within you. And once you feel it, really feel it, you'll never again be able to pretend that this world is all there is. From ancient Vedic seers to mystics lost to time, whispers of this field have endured. They knew that beneath all form is a formless record, that memory does not die with the body, but lives on, encoded in a subtle realm, known by many names but felt by all who listen. The Hindus called it Akasha. The Hebrews knew of the Book of Life. The Egyptians spoke of scrolls weighed against the heart. Different names, same truth. The soul remembers everything, even when the mind forgets, even when the world tries to erase it. And that forgetting, that imposed amnesia, is no accident either. From the moment you were born, systems rushed in to name you, mold you, distract you. You were handed beliefs, identities, and timelines as though they were truth, when in fact they were noise. The Akashic Records do not speak through noise. They speak through presence. They speak through the part of you that wakes at 3 a.m. with a sudden knowing. They speak through your tears when no one else understands the weight you carry. They speak through that silence behind your eyes, the one that has always known you were more than this body, this name, this moment. Most people never hear the records because they've been trained to distrust their inner world. They think knowledge must be earned, that wisdom is something granted by others. But the records say otherwise. They remind you that you are not a student seeking truth. You are a soul remembering it. And that remembrance is not reserved for the elite, the enlightened, or the chosen. It belongs to you. It has always belonged to you. So ask yourself, why now? Why is this message reaching you today and not a year ago or 10 years from now? Why have your dreams grown more vivid? Why do certain memories feel like echoes from another life? Why has the old story begun to crumble? Because you are ready. The veil is thinning and the records are calling, not to teach you who you are, but to remind you of who you've always been. The Akashic Records are not read with the eyes. They are felt with the soul. When you try to grasp them with logic, they vanish like mist. But when you surrender into presence, they emerge, not as facts, but as vibrations, as inner truths wrapped in emotion, symbols, color, and silence. That is why the most profound truths cannot be taught. They must be remembered. And memory in this sacred context is not simply recollection, it is resurrection. To remember is to bring back the parts of yourself that the world asked you to bury. You've had these moments already, where the veil thinned, where time folded in on itself, and something ancient moved through you. Maybe it came in the middle of a prayer you didn't know you knew. Maybe it arrived in the touch of someone you swore you'd never met, yet felt like home. Or maybe it surfaced in a sudden understanding of why your soul aches in the same places, over and over again. That ache is a breadcrumb. It leads back to a pattern, and that pattern is the architecture of your soul's memory. Every decision you've made, every emotion you've felt, every lesson you've faced, it's all stored in the Akashic field. Not in judgment, not in shame, but in perfect, loving detail. Like a master weaver, the records preserve each thread of your soul's journey, each lifetime, each incarnation, each initiation into wisdom. That's why some people are born speaking through art, others through healing, others through grief. because their soul remembers what their mind cannot yet explain. And when you feel it, you don't need evidence. The resonance is enough. There are no wasted lifetimes. Not one tear has gone unrecorded. Not one heartbreak has vanished into nothing. Everything you've endured long before this incarnation has led you to now. The trauma you carry in this life may not have originated here. The fears, the obsessions, the inexplicable longing, they are echoes from the field. And the Akashic Records do not hide these echoes. They amplify them. So you can finally face what you've avoided and release what you've unknowingly held for centuries. And with that release comes revelation. Because the Akashic Records don't just show you what you've suffered, they show you your power. They remind you of the light you carried in lifetimes when you walked as a priestess, as a healer, as a philosopher, as a protector of sacred knowledge. They show you why the old world tried to silence you, because even in forgetting, your light remained dangerous to those who sought to control. And now that light is rising again. The remembering has begun. But to step into the records is to do more than recall the past. It is to reclaim your blueprint, the energetic pattern written into your soul before you ever took form. This blueprint is not a fixed destiny. It is a living script, a framework of lessons, relationships, and opportunities chosen by your higher self, not to punish you, but to activate you. And the more you remember, the less life feels random. The more you align with that script, the more the chaos quiets, and the deeper your truth begins to speak. There are reasons you crossed paths with certain people, reasons that logic cannot explain. The mother who wounded you, the friend who disappeared without warning, the lover who shattered your heart and yet awakened something dormant within you. These weren't coincidences. They were contracts, soul-level agreements made long before this life began. You didn't meet them by chance. You met them by design. And the Akashic Records carry the imprint of every sacred contract your soul has signed through time. These contracts aren't punishments. They are mirrors. Some reflect love so deep it heals lifetimes in a single glance. Others reflect your shadows, your unhealed places, the wounds you've refused to name, and yet each of them serves the same purpose: awakening. The soul doesn't evolve in comfort, it evolves in truth, and the truth is often delivered through pain that feels unbearable until you remember why you chose it. That's what the records reveal. Not just what happened, but what it meant. Not just who hurt you, but what it stirred in you that was ready to be healed. You've likely felt the gravity of these contracts before: an instant bond with a stranger, an unshakable tension with someone you've just met. That recognition lives in the soul, not the brain. It bypasses the story and touches the memory buried underneath. You don't remember their name, but your energy does. You don't recall the moment, but your body reacts. That is soul memory stirring. That is the Akashic field reminding you of what was left unfinished, unresolved, or untouched. And here's the sacred paradox. While these contracts are real, they are not cages. You are never bound forever. A contract once fulfilled or consciously released no longer holds power over you. The Akashic Records don't trap you in karma. They show you how to close the loop. They offer you the ability to witness the full arc of a pattern so that you may step out of it with awareness. You don't need to keep repeating what your soul has already learned, but you do need to see it to free it. This is where the work begins. Not in the seeking of more information, but in the willingness to integrate what arises. The records don't flatter your ego. They dismantle it. They show you the wounds you've projected onto others, the truths you've denied, the love you've resisted out of fear. And then gently, they invite you to choose again. Not from guilt, not from pain, but from remembrance. Because once you remember, the excuses fall away. What's left is responsibility, and that is the most sacred kind of power. To walk with awareness of your soul's contracts is not to escape your humanity. It is to embrace it fully. You begin to see that even your deepest betrayals were part of a greater design. That every tear, every silence, every goodbye was leading you somewhere holy, somewhere ancient, somewhere your soul always knew you'd return to, not to relive the past, but to reclaim the present with open eyes and an awakened heart. The world taught you to fear pain, to medicate it, avoid it, suppress it. But the Akashic Records tell a different story. They reveal pain not as a punishment, but as a portal, an opening into deeper remembrance. You were never meant to numb your way through this life. You were meant to feel, to allow the soul's echoes to rise through your emotional body until you could trace the wound back to its origin. Because beneath every fear is a memory, and beneath every memory is a message. And once the message is received, the pain begins to lose its grip. Some of your deepest wounds didn't start in this lifetime. The abandonment you fear, the shame you carry, the patterns you replay, these may have roots in lifetimes you don't consciously recall, but your soul does. And so does your body, your nervous system, your instincts, your subtle energies. They are archives of soul memory. This is why healing is not just emotional, it is spiritual. It is a retrieval, a resurrection, a sacred remembering of what was buried but never gone. The Akashic Records offer you this map, not in the form of a manual, but as energy, as frequency, as sudden clarity that arrives in silence. You don't find the records through striving. You align with them through stillness, through surrender, through radical honesty with yourself. When you stop running from your pain and ask it, "What do you remember?" That's when the door opens. That's when the blueprint begins to reveal itself. Not all at once, but in waves, each one washing away the false story you were told to live. And that blueprint, it's not rigid. It evolves as you do. It responds to your choices. Every time you choose truth over fear, alignment over approval, presence over distraction, you activate a new layer of your soul's design. That is why remembering is not a passive act. It's a participatory dance with destiny. It is the reclamation of authorship over your life. Not to control it, but to co-create with it. To step into your next chapter with intention, not habit. This is why so many feel lost. Not because they are without purpose, but because they are living someone else's map. They were handed templates for success, love, identity, and none of them fit. Because their soul's design was never supposed to fit inside a system built on forgetting. The Akashic Records expose that dissonance. They show you where you've compromised your truth for safety. They reveal the places where your soul has outgrown the life you've built. And they ask you, not gently but urgently, are you willing to live what you remember? Because remembering comes with responsibility. Once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. Once you hear the soul's whisper, you can't pretend it was just noise. And once you glimpse the blueprint beneath your pain, you are no longer a victim of your life. You become its architect, not to erase what was, but to build something holy from what still remains. The greatest wisdom doesn't speak in volume. It arrives in stillness, in the quiet between thoughts, in the pause between breaths. That's where the Akashic Records live, not in the noise of explanation, but in the subtle rhythm of remembrance. This is why so few people truly access them, not because they lack the gift, but because they lack the space. The modern world keeps us too busy, too loud, too full, stuffed with opinions, screens, and distractions. But the records, they wait patiently. They are never in a rush. They wait for you to slow down. To return, you may have brushed against them without knowing. In that moment of awe under a starry sky, in the quiet tear that escaped during meditation, in the shiver down your spine when someone said words your soul already knew. These are not coincidences. They are alignments, moments where your vibration momentarily matched the truth of your being. The Akashic field responds not to intellect, but to frequency, not to wanting, but to readiness, not to expertise, but to resonance. And resonance cannot be forced. It must be felt. This is why spiritual practices matter, not as rituals to impress the divine, but as invitations to realign. Meditation, breath work, journaling, sacred movement, they're not about achieving anything. They are about returning to the space within you where the static clears and the deeper voice emerges. That voice is not external. It is not new. It is you, the version of you that remembers. And it does not shout. It whispers, which is why silence is not empty. It's full of everything the soul has been waiting to say. The more you listen, the more you'll notice the language of the records is not made of words. It is made of knowing. A knowing that bypasses thought and drops straight into the body. You might receive it as imagery, as sound, as colors that carry emotion, or symbols you don't understand but feel intimately familiar. This is not madness. This is memory. This is your multidimensional consciousness retrieving fragments of self that never truly left you. They were just silenced. And here's something sacred. The records don't judge. They don't care if you've made mistakes, failed 100 times, or walked far from your truth. They only care that you return. They only care that you're willing to be honest, to ask the real questions. Why am I here? What am I still carrying? What am I now ready to release? When those questions come not from ego, but from surrender, the answers rise, not as facts, but as transformation. So don't be surprised if accessing the records changes you, if it softens you in places you didn't know were hard, if it breaks you open in a way that feels like grief, but ends as grace. This is not a performance. This is not a spectacle. It is a sacred reunion with the self you forgot, the self who has always been watching, waiting, remembering, even when you couldn't. Have you ever felt like you're living the same story in different forms, different faces, different places, but the same lesson, looping, repeating, demanding your attention? This is not a curse. This is your soul asking to be heard. The Akashic Records reveal what life often conceals, that unresolved energy seeks completion, that karmic threads do not disappear with death. They weave through lifetimes, carrying forward what was never healed, never spoken, never seen, until you remember. The same heartbreak, the same fear, the same sabotage. It's not random. It's a call, a pattern replaying itself like a forgotten song on repeat. Not to torment you, but to awaken you. Because once you see the loop, you have the power to step out of it. That is what the records offer. Not salvation from suffering, but illumination of its purpose. They show you the why behind your what, the root beneath your reaction, the original wound beneath the surface conflict. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. This is why healing feels hard. Not because you're weak, but because you are confronting layers. Some of those layers don't belong to this lifetime. Some belong to a child version of you. Some belong to the woman you were in another land, another era. Some aren't even yours. They're inherited, passed through lineage, through DNA, through unspoken pain. But when you enter the Akashic field, you hold the torch. You become the one who sees, the one who names, the one who heals. Not only for yourself, but for those who could not. And this is where generational healing begins. You were not born to repeat. You were born to release, to break the cycles that your ancestors never had the chance to. You are the chosen one in your line, not because you're better, but because you're ready. And readiness doesn't mean perfection. It means willingness. Willingness to feel, willingness to remember. Willingness to say, this ends with me. The records support that vow. They echo back your courage with clarity. When you work with the Akashic Records, you start to understand karma not as punishment, but as repetition without awareness. You start to see how even your deepest wounds hold gifts. That betrayal carved the space where discernment now lives. That silence created the longing for truth. That abandonment shaped your strength. These are not just survival skills. They are initiations, the soul's way of preparing you for what you came to awaken. And the moment you remember that, you begin to transform, not just in how you think, but in how you feel, how you walk, how you meet the world. You start choosing differently, speaking differently, loving differently, not out of fear, but from alignment, from resonance, from truth. And when your life aligns with your soul's memory, the old timeline collapses. The new one begins, not out there, but right here, inside you. The world you were born into told you that knowledge lives in books, that truth wears credentials, and that wisdom belongs to the few. But the Akashic Records reveal a different path, one where you are the library, the sacred text, the living scroll. You were never meant to beg for truth outside of yourself. You were meant to remember that truth is encoded in your being. And once you begin to walk as a soul who remembers, you become the bridge between the visible and the invisible. You become the one who brings light into places where others only see shadow. This isn't about superiority or spiritual ego. This is about service. The more you remember, the more responsibility you carry, not to preach but to embody, not to convince but to radiate. The awakened soul doesn't speak louder, it resonates deeper. And that resonance doesn't just change you, it touches others. People feel it. They may not know why, but they sense something ancient moving through you. A kind of clarity, a kind of peace, a kind of truth that cannot be faked because it has been remembered. The Akashic Records awaken your sacred role, and that role may not look like a stage, a title, or a following. It may look like presence, like the mother who listens differently, the friend who no longer judges, the creator who channels without fear, the human who no longer apologizes for their sensitivity, intuition, or vision. When you carry the memory of who you are, you stop trying to prove it. And in that stillness, in that certainty, your very existence becomes a catalyst for change. And this is where your soul's power becomes practical. It doesn't just live in meditation or mystic moments. It shows up in how you respond to conflict, how you honor your truth even when it costs you comfort, how you walk away when something no longer serves the frequency you've claimed, how you create, speak, write, love from a place of deep remembrance, not performance. The Akashic Records don't want you to escape this world. They want you to live in it more fully, with your soul turned all the way on. You see, remembering is not a finish line. It's a practice, a state of being, a sacred rhythm between forgetting and returning. Even mystics forget. Even sages fall asleep. The difference is they return faster, with more grace, less guilt. And every time you return to yourself, the field strengthens. Every time you choose alignment over approval, the veil thins. Every time you honor your knowing, the records open wider. So don't wait for the world to validate your memory. Don't wait for permission to embody your truth. The records have already spoken. The blueprint is already within you. The contract is already signed. You are the soul who said yes. Yes to awakening. Yes to truth. Yes to remembering what others forgot. And yes to becoming the mirror that reflects that remembrance back to the world. One breath, one choice, one vibration at a time. You are not who they told you to be. You never were. You were not born to be small, compliant, silenced, or broken. You were born to remember, to awaken, to look into the illusion and say, I know who I am. That voice you've been hearing in the quiet, that pull in your chest that won't go away, that dream you keep having of something more, something deeper, more real than anything this world ever gave you. That's not a fantasy. That's your soul remembering itself through the Akashic field. That's your truth breaking through the cracks of your forgetting. The Akashic Records are not here to make you feel special. They're here to make you whole. They remind you of what was hidden, not to impress you, but to initiate you, to call you out of spiritual amnesia and into sacred alignment. The moment you choose remembrance, your life changes. It may fall apart. It may get louder, stranger, more raw. But everything that unravels does so because it was never yours to carry. The false timelines, the borrowed dreams, the inherited fears, dismantled by the light of your own awareness. This is what remembering does. It clears the path for you to return to who you've always been. And when you walk in that remembering, the world around you begins to shift. You see through the games. You stop engaging with anything that asks you to betray your soul. You release relationships built on roles you no longer agree to play. You stop shrinking, apologizing, explaining. You begin to trust your timing, your voice, your intuition. You don't need proof. You are the proof. You don't chase answers. You carry them. And you don't look for permission because you finally realize that you are the one you were waiting for. Let this be your confirmation. You didn't imagine it. You weren't crazy to feel what you felt, to know what you knew, to dream what you dreamed. The Akashic Records confirm the deepest truth you've always carried, that your path is real, that your gifts are real, that your soul's memory is not a myth. It's your map. And every time you sit in silence, every time you create, speak, or love from the frequency of remembrance, you are writing the next line in that map, the next sentence in that sacred story. So what now? What will you do with this remembering? Will you go back to sleep, pretend you didn't hear, scroll past your own awakening? Or will you pause, breathe, and claim it? Will you start speaking from the place that aches to be known? Will you live as though you are already free? Because you are. The Akashic Records don't bind you. They liberate you. But they cannot do the living for you. That part is yours. Let this be the beginning of something holy, a vow to no longer forget, a promise to return, again and again, to the deepest voice inside you, the one that knows. You are not your pain. You are not your past. You are not even this name. You are a soul, infinite and luminous, encoded with divine memory. And when you remember that fully, when you live from that place, the world will remember itself through you. If you've made it this far, drop 100 in the comments. It shows you are part of the 1% that's improving every single day.